Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Today we're going to speak about your life, because everyone can understand that for you, your life is very important. You want to have a feeling that your life is fulfilled, it has some significance, it has some meaning, and it has some purpose. These are the hopes that drive us onward. Perhaps sometimes you've wondered, what is it that makes you tick? What is it that causes you, motivates you, propels you to push ahead in whatever way you're trying to do that? Maybe through school, maybe through work, maybe through relationships, maybe through some competitive undertaking. There's something that pushes you forward. If you could just get your hands on that dynamic that propels you forward, you could understand a lot about your life. On Friday, of course, we celebrated the appearance day of Lord Nrsingadeva. And whenever you think of Lord Nrsingadeva, you think of his dear devotee, Prahlad Maharaj. In his childhood, Prahlad Maharaj gave a very important guideline for how we can position our life. To where should we aim our life? Because your life is a bunch of energy. So to what are you directing it? To where are you aiming? Prahlad very famously said, Komar acharet pragya dharman bhagavatanah durlabham manasam janma tarapya dhruvam artadam. From the very beginning of life, shape your goals, fix your aim on the target of understanding the science of the Supreme, Bhagavat Dharma. Implicit in his statement is that if you can't do it from the very beginning of your life, then do it from at least the point in your life when you realize what the human form of life is mostly meant for. Better, though, to do it from a young age. Because as many of us have noticed, as you become older, you become more inflexible, you become more molded, you become more fossilized. So the advantage of beginning your bhakti when you're young is that you can adapt more easily. But as the years and decades pile on, we become fixed in our ways. Even though Prahlad was 5 years old, he understood that. Therefore, he said, begin as young as possible. And then he gave a very incisive understanding of the significance of having a human body. Maybe most of us have never considered that. It's a pivotal emphasis that Srila Prabhupada would often repeat. The human body brings with it weighty responsibility for achieving the ultimate goal of life. Now, there's so many pressures upon us these days. economic pressures, political pressures, social pressures. If you happen to be under 30, the two greatest pressures upon you are, number one, college debts, and number two, social media. Both have become impossible to escape these days. And if you're older, you have the pressures of maintaining your health, maintaining a respectable position in society. Once we understand the true value of the human body, then we can shape our life accordingly. Otherwise, if we're always open to whatever someone is downloading into us, you'll find that your whole life is about marching to someone else's tune, someone else's beat. For a while, you may feel some kind of security in that I'm doing what everyone else does pretty much. I do it my own style, of course, but I'm pretty much marching in step, and so I must be all right. I must be a good person. I'm nothing super sensational, but I'm not the worst either. And I can look around and see most people are doing what I'm doing. They're goalless, they're clueless, but they're absorbed in what you may call the mass consensual trance. As a collective, so many human beings agree to just walk around in a daze. And they give permission to one another to do that. You're lost in a daze, I'm lost in a daze. That's the way life is. There are two ways you can evaluate your life. Number one is called momentary happiness. Number two is the life evaluation. Now here you have a major difference amongst those born in Bharat, in India, and those born in the West. You may notice that in the Western world, the emphasis is on momentary happiness. How do you feel right now at this moment? At this moment, you should be feeling happy. And you should know that others right at this moment are happy. Why aren't you happy? So you have this enormous anxiety and guilt complex. I'm not getting at this moment what so many others are getting from this moment. Some information from statistics. You know, the Gallup organization surveys everything. So they did a worldwide survey of momentary happiness. How does your nation rank? How do they measure momentary happiness? It's easy because almost everyone has a smartphone these days. So the psychological researcher sends a SMS to your cell phone. How do you feel right now on a scale of 1 to 10? And then you enter a number. Then sometime later in the day, and now, how do you feel right now at this moment? You enter a number. So in this way, they accumulate all this data about how people consider they're feeling right at the moment. Because that moment of happiness is so important. Are you being gratified right now? Are you being satisfied right now? Are you being entertained right now? And you might say, yes, I'm feeling content right now. I'm feeling satisfied at this moment. But then the SMS will come on your phone an hour later. And what about this moment? Of course, your happiness levels can change from moment to moment. But anyway, the Gallup organization decided to survey nations in the world and rank them according to momentary happiness. We'll talk about the other type of happiness later, which is more recognizable to those of you born in Bart. So, on the international rankings, the USA, land of the American dream, came out number 25, 2 notches below Rwanda. Where 20 years ago there was, genocide and approximately 1 million people were killed. But, as I've been pointing out in my talks the past couple of weeks, according to the World Health Organization, when it comes to anxiety, the USA is great. Number 1. Great, the greatest anxiety. Number 1, and not a squeaker, not by a small margin, but by a wide margin of victory. So, obviously, you don't want your whole life measured in momentary happiness, although it's very important, especially for those born in the West. You're living in a consumer society that is always trying to manipulate you, agitate you, and make you feel dissatisfied with what you have, and simultaneously tell you that if you just get something more, then you'll be satisfied. So you may be thinking, what about the other kind of happiness? The life evaluation happiness. That's kind of like the smug feeling that you can have when you survey a few decades of your life and you think, pretty much my life is successful. Pretty much I'm sometimes doing what I want to do, and sometimes things work out, and it's a different thing from moment-to-moment happiness, because in the life evaluation happiness, that feeling of happiness when you look at your whole lifespan, you may admit, well, last year was a bad year. 5 years ago was a really tough time. But overall, I feel that my life is worthwhile. I've done a few good things. I've experienced a few good moments, a few good months. We'll leave it at that. A lot of the perception of the life evaluation for happiness has to do with the perception of others. And those of you who are born in India, you may recognize this. One of my associates in India told me, he said, here is the succinct difference between life in the West and life in India. In the West, and we would say especially in California, you don't worry about what others think. You do what you have to do for your own satisfaction. The opinions of others don't form a major part of what determines your actions, your choices. You're individual. It's not that you're an insensitive brute. You take into account the feelings of others, but nevertheless, you know it's my life. I've got to live the way I want to live. Whereas in India, this associate of mine was telling me, it's the opposite. You always are worrying, what do the others think, right? How do they see me? How do they perceive me? So the life evaluation happiness is very important. I want others to see that my life is honorable. I've done my duty as far as everyone can see. And I've honored my commitments. I expect what? Social status and social respect. We spoke about Prahlad Maharaj's distinctly different way of gauging the worth of your life. Number one, he said, how does it begin? He advises from a young age as possible. Start Bhagavad Dharma. Start your immersion into the science of the Supreme. And in urging you to do that, he's stressing the unique value of the human body. He points out it's not easy to get a human body. We may have never considered that point extensively. We just take it for granted. I've got a human body. What's the big deal? But Prahlad says, Durlabham manasam janma. That birth is very difficult to get. Nevertheless, it is temporary. Tadapya dhruvam artadam. A dhruva, it's temporary. It's not going to last. Nevertheless, it still has arta. It still has value. So you see, in bhakti, we're not against temporary things, but we recognize the purpose of temporary things, just as Prahlad does. This human body you have is not going to last, and normally we don't ascribe value to temporary acquisitions. But this particular temporary acquisition is full of value because with it, you can achieve the ultimate spiritual success in life. So I hope that when you look at your life, you can use these two tools and see what is taking up your time, where are your energies going. You've got the quest for momentary happiness, and you have the quest for overall life fulfillment, life satisfaction when you evaluate a few decades at least of your life. What we don't want to think about is what it will be like at the end of this body, right? That's considered very negative thinking. Instead, your focus should be on what are you doing with this moment and how much achievement and social status your overall life will achieve. Never mind that you're going to leave it all behind. The fact, as we see it, that we have achieved something means so much to us. We've garnered some distinction, some respect. Our children and our grandchildren can look up to us, even though we're gone. They can look up to us and feel that my father, my mother, my grandparents, they did something. So for some reason, we really feel that burden. But let's just make an experiment. Let's consider what we would be like in our last days in this body. We're not going to think too much about it because no one likes to do that. But we'll just do it for a few minutes, okay? I promise you, only a few minutes. Because if we are committed to the quest for material happiness, it's best you think that the quest will never end. The body will just go on, even though you know it won't. But you have to act in that way. There's always one hope leading to another hope. As Krishna says in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Asha Pasha Shatar Bada, wrapped up, bound by a network of false hopes. One hope leads to another hope. We may talk about this later. In psychological terms, The phenomenon is given a fancy name. The hedonic adaptation curve. But for now, let's focus on your last days. Obviously, there are going to be emotions associated with that. And regret plays an enormous emotional role. A study has been done of what are the 5 major regrets of persons at hospices. You're obviously at a hospice for a particular reason. You're exiting. So you'd be interested to know, what are the 5 top regrets? People may say, I'm giving up this body with no regrets. Don't believe it. Okay, regret number 1. Why didn't I allow myself to be more happy? Why didn't I act more to make me happy? Regret number 2. Some of you here may recognize it right now. Why did I work so hard? Regret number 3. Why didn't I express my emotions more in terms of, I don't like this, or I really love that? Why couldn't I have been more self-expressive? And regret number 4. Why did I work so hard? Yeah. Okay. Why didn't I keep up with my friends? I allowed time and distance to separate me from friends who were so dear to me because I was so focused on my career, my family, that I let valuable friendships drift away. Can you see the possibility that you might have some of these regrets? And what is the number 1 regret of the 5? Number 1 is, why did I live my life so much in terms of others' expectations? Why didn't I live my life according to my own vision? That's number 1. So what do you think? Are you going to be able to avoid all these 5 regrets? Or are we just barreling along in our life and trying to garner moment-to-moment happiness and overall life evaluation happiness? And that's it. Prahlad Maharaj wants to save us from this fate. But first he has to convince us of the unique value of the human body. If you analyze his instructions, what he was speaking to his 5-year-old school friends, and if you analyze the prayers that he offered to Lord Nrsingadeva, you see that he's really dispelling the whole fog of attaining material happiness. Some of you may know of a famous Vaishnava poet, Srila Vidyapati, who said something very provocative. He stated that the happiness that we get from society, friendship, and love is just like a drop of water in the desert. What do you think? Does that sound unmotivating? And what do you think? Negative talk. But actually he was giving credit. He was being positive. How could that be? He said, it's like a drop of water in the desert. So a drop of water is something, yes? Okay, let's jump on it. That's very important. He's upbeat. He's not like those fanatical harekrishnas who say there's no happiness in the material world. He doesn't say that. He says, yes, just like there can be a drop of water in the desert, there can be some semblance of happiness in the material world. Okay? All right. Not bad, huh? There's a problem that you recognize here. If you're in the desert, you can't make it with a drop of water. The desert has scorching heat. To cool off the desert, you need millions upon millions of gallons of water. What will one drop do? Nevertheless, Srila Vijapati is pointing out, you do have a drop. In other words, there is something in material existence. There's a drop of what you need, but, of course, the drop is not enough. Nowhere near enough. So why, then, is there the drop at all? You see, there is a semblance of happiness in material existence. We give credit where credit is due. There is something there. Just like in a shadow, there is a semblance of the substance. But you will never be satisfied with shadows. You want the actual substance that casts the shadow. Still, a shadow is something. So similarly, Srila Vijapati says that there's a drop of water in the desert. Obviously, a drop will not suffice. But again, why is there at least a drop? Because our material endeavors, what we're pursuing with our material endeavors, is based on the spiritual reality. As Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, we're dealing with a reflection, and the reflection is cast by real light. So we're squeezing a reflection for all we can. We want to be successful, we want to achieve, so we get that drop sometimes. But the drop of water cannot satisfy us. It cannot change the scorching heat of the desert. So what do you finally conclude after decades of chasing the one drop of water? You conclude that, well, this is what life is all about, and just be satisfied with that. This is the difference between those of you who are under 30 and those of you who are in your late 50s, 60s, 70s. Social psychologists have pointed out that when you're young, you're under 30, you're a millennial or whatever, your concept of happiness is all about awesome events, awesome occurrences, special moments that you can broadcast on social media. Things that stand out, events, relationships, sensations that stand out from the usual. But for those of you who are in your late 50s, 60s, 70s, your way of experiencing happiness changes. In the latter phase of your life, shall we say, the golden years. In those years, your concept of happiness is all about the ordinary things in life. Just seeing another day, a sunrise, a sunset, seeing the grandchildren start to walk, going for a walk through a park that's right near your house, because you don't want to get too far away from your house. in your old age, you take shelter of the ordinary. Whereas when you're young, everything has to be a special, unique, awesome happening. In either case, though, Prahlad Maharaj is teaching us, you can't be satisfied. You can't be fulfilled. Although there's a drop there, you need millions of gallons. And you're not going to get that materially. It's not going to happen in material existence. So the drop of water is giving you a hint of the real need. But the drop in of itself is not enough. Now let's flip the situation over and look at things from another angle. I think I heard a little child here, yes? Yes. I'm going to use her as an example. If this little child starts thinking, I am going to pursue happiness on my own, everyone would say, you silly little girl, what can you do? How old are you? How old are you? 4? 3. Okay. If the child decides in some kind of concocted way, I'm going to live my life, I am going to get happiness for me on my own, people would say this child has gone mad. The child has to operate in tandem with the mother. There's no question of this child being safe simply on its own. Everyone expects child, parent together. No one would consider it normal if the child decides to strike out on its own. I will pursue my own fate. I will pursue my own destiny. But this is exactly what we do to Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarvayonishu konteya murteya sambhavantya. You should know, Krishna says, that no matter what species of life, no matter what body, human or whatever, I am the seed-giving Father. But we don't take that into account when it's time for pursuing pleasure, right? It's all up to us. And that is as ridiculous as this child saying, it's all up to me. I'm going to shape my own life right now, although I'm just 3 years old. No one would accept that. But we do accept a life of pursuing happiness separate from Krishna. In the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Mamaivam sho jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana. All you living entities, you should know you're my parts, my fragmented parts, eternally. But you're stuck in the oppressive material atmosphere, the prakriti sthani. And what are you doing as you're stuck in that atmosphere, in that desert? Karshati, you're struggling. And what are you struggling for? The drop of water, which will never quench your thirst and will certainly never change the scorching conditions in the desert. So I sort of promised you we would talk about a major barrier in our quest for success, happiness, and fulfillment. If you can figure out this major impediment, you could save yourself a lot of trouble. But let me warn you in advance, even the best social researchers who figured this particular thing out, they still can't make their life successful. We'll explain why later. So what is the problem with our innocent quest for satisfaction, for fulfillment? It's something in fancy terminology called the hedonic adaptation curve. Hedonic like hedonism. Adaptation means you become accustomed to whatever you're experiencing. What starts out to be fresh and exciting soon loses its attractiveness. Things become stale. People become stale. Activities, events become stale. This is called adaptation. You always adapt to something, even if it's so exciting at first. It becomes the same old, same old. So the hedonic adaptation curve means that, let's say you encounter some new and fresh experience or person. You go to a new, exciting, fresh place. You change jobs. You change houses. You change partners. At first, you start off apparently high on the curve. But then what happens? Due to the effect of time, you've got to crash. Mm-hmm. So much of our struggle in material existence is how to defeat that curve. We're mostly not conscious of it. How can I make it so the curve doesn't crash? Or, if you're kind of a realist and a bit cynical, you say, well, even though the curve is going to crash eventually, how can I drag it out for as long as possible? And that'll be success. If instead of the curve crashing after 50 seconds, if I can sustain it for 5 minutes, oh, that is wonderful. So you might wonder that the social scientists, many of them Nobel Prize winners, who have exposed this curve, obviously it would seem they should be immune to it because they've studied it, they've done so much research around the world. No, they themselves admit that they fall for it again and again and again. Now, why is that? You may recall how in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the aspiring yogi may try to restrict himself, herself, from external attempts for satisfaction, but such a yogi will fail unless the yogi has a superior experience, a superior flavor, a superior taste to replace the false temporary quest. Unless that's there, the aspiring yogi must become victimized. So this phenomenon that Krishna is pointing out teaches us something about the quest for material fulfillment. We will push on in that way unless we have something better to do. So often, I find that persons have the conception of bhakti that it involves denying yourself, clenching your hands together and trying to clamp down on yourself, biting your fingernails. But Krishna himself says it's impossible for bhakti to be like that, because we have to get our flavor from something. So what Krishna's instructions are doing is change the flavors, not annihilate the flavors. But we're so paranoid. Oh no, everything that's so dear to me is going to be yanked away by Krishna. I'll be left high and dry with nothing. Here we have Srila Vidyapati saying that the pleasure of society, friendship, and love is just like a drop of water in the desert. What is he trying to do? Just take away everything that makes life livable? We're so sensitive about having what is near and dear to us yanked away. We don't have the knowledge or the experience yet that Krishna has better things in store for us. So Srila Vidyapati is not being negative, saying all this is just like a drop of water in the desert. He's alerting you to the fact that there is real water in unlimited quantities available if you would apply yourself in a different way, if you would change your lifestyle. So this is why Prahlad Maharaj is so insistent, even at the age of 5 years old. Start your bhakti as young as possible. Gain the greatest wealth, the spiritual wealth, from as young an age as possible. And that is true success. So naturally, you all want to be successful. But if we change our parameters of success, we actually have a chance then for real success. So Bhakti Yoga is about spiritual success. Material success may be there, it may not be there. It comes and goes. But spiritual success is the greatest acquisition. As Krishna explains in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, upon attaining the spiritual wealth, you understand, you experience, there's no greater gain. And even through external calamities or distresses, because you have that spiritual wealth, you can't lose it, you're not shaken. So Krishna explains, this is real freedom. This is the real attainment. So gradually, by chanting Hare Krishna, associating with sincere devotees, executing the process of bhakti, we lose our paranoia that I'm going to be stripped of everything and left with nothing. We always have such a fear because material life means fear that you will lose the competition. And you have the false confidence that surely many out there are attaining material happiness. It's just me. I'm the one who's missing out. All these delusions affect us. And because the quest for material success and happiness involves fierce competition, fierce battles, we're always afraid of coming out on the losing end. I often ask this question when I'm speaking at colleges. I'll try it on you. How many of you, and I've done it in India also, and 80%, let me tell you, 80% of the audience, they raise their hands and say, yes, we've done this. How many of you, when you were little, played the game musical chairs? Raise your hand. Yes. Do you remember how you felt when the music stopped and you didn't have a chair? Ah! Horrible, wasn't it? Oh, panic, right? What did you try to do? You tried to squeeze onto the chair of another kid, right? Anything but be left without a chair. So that kind of paranoia in the material quest stays with us, not only through this lifetime, but life after life. As Krishna says in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Mudha Janmani Janmani. Not only are we a fool in one lifetime, but lifetime after lifetime. So obviously an intelligent person wants to avoid that fate. And therefore Prahlad Maharaj's instruction is so important. Komara acharat pragyo. From the very beginning of life. Don't wait until you're so old that you're fossilized. When you're young and flexible, that's the time. Still, Srila Prabhupada in his explanation of that verse points out that you can also take the verse to mean that from whatever point in your life you understand finally what the real mission is, then you start moving in the right direction. So Prahlad Maharaj's instructions are all-inclusive. Whether you're in the youthful stage or you're very elderly, start where you are now. Learn the science of Bhagavad Dharma, the science of the Supreme, and don't be fooled by the hope of attaining a drop of water in the desert, because even if you get it, it'll never be enough. And you'll always think, the next one, the next drop of water, the next drop of water. Krishna is giving us such merciful instructions in Bhagavad Gita, not to strip us of all that's dear to us, but to give us the greatest wealth, the most precious jewels. So let's consider that as we move forward in our life. Let's remember, the moment-to-moment happiness, that's one type, and the life evaluation type of happiness. Neither of those two forms of material happiness will satisfy us. Krishna has something better for us. Engagement in his service, using our senses for the pleasure of Krishna in all the many activities of bhakti. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Someone way in the back there.
Well, my question is, can you hear? You say that, Krishna has a lot in store for us, and the happiness through Krishna will be much better. But how can we find that out? I mean, before we dive in, what is the criteria for starting to find that bliss or happiness?
Krishna is very merciful as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He gives you a taste first and then asks you to please change your lifestyle. Whereas Krishna himself is very strict. Change first, taste later. But that same Krishna, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, taste now, and then later we talk about the other things. So the more you take shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through chanting Hare Krishna, dancing, taking prasad, associating with devotees, the more you'll see clearly how you can transform your lifestyle so that you can indeed experience more of what Krishna is talking about in Bhagavad Gita. But the fact is, as soon as your tongue touches the Hare Krishna mantra, there is an effect. And as you progress in bhakti, you start to realize that more and more. Just like, again, this 3-year-old child. If you put a diamond in that 3-year-old child's hand, the fact is the child has a diamond, right? It's just that the child has no consciousness, is not aware of the full value of what the child has in the hand. Still, the child has it. So similarly, when you chant Hare Krishna, you have Krishna, but the bhakti process is about transforming your consciousness and lifestyle, the two go hand in hand, so that gradually you become aware of what is so mercifully being made available to you. Okay? Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
Maharaj, I have a complaint. Maharaj, I have a complaint. Your visit to SanDiego is too short this time.
We're lucky he came to tell the truth. He got here at 11 o'clock last night. What time are you leaving, Maharaj? Right after the... And he's come only out of kindness. Your point is nice, but I just... you made a special effort to come here. Thank you for your appreciation. Any other questions? We have 4 minutes. Yes.
Hi. I don't know if this is going to make sense, but what would Krishna say or do to, like, about trauma?
All of us have been through traumas in one way or another. And we don't want to minimize the impact of such unfortunate events. This world is full of abuse. It's full of unwanted experiences. You brought something to my mind. I was talking to one of my godbrothers, a senior disciple of Prabhupada, and he told me about his father and the trauma his father went through in World War II in the last days. His father was in the army, and they were liberating the concentration camps. And so the Nazis, the SS, had departed the night before. And so the American soldiers came upon a village where all the women were crying. And they couldn't figure out. I mean, we're here. The victors are here. We're here to liberate you. Everything is fine now. Why is every lady in this village crying? And then this devotee's father, a serviceman, found out. As the Nazis were leaving, abandoning their posts, abandoning the concentration camp, abandoning the village, they gathered all the mothers with infants and took the infants, threw them up in the air so the infants would land on their bayonets. Talk about trauma. This devotee's father at that point said, he was Jewish, he said, there is no God. There's no way that there can be a God who allows this. So this is trauma. But these kind of atrocities, unfortunately, horribly so, accompany life in this world, whether it happens here or there, or not here, but over there. And then the traumas from personal abuse. So what does Krishna say about it? Actually, Krishna categorizes all of material existence as traumatic. The whole package, rather than just picking out this isolated horrible incident or that isolated horrible incident, Krishna is saying, look at the whole package and deal with it. Because you solve one trauma, and then what happens? Another one comes. So how to stop the whole package? That is the brilliant solution that Krishna is giving. That's real sympathy, real compassion. How to get to the root of the whole situation. That's more important than even solving this individual trauma or that individual trauma. Why traumas in the first place? Krishna is dealing with that. Okay?
Thank you.
How are we doing for time?
We have a few more minutes.
All right, all right.
One question related to that. What happens to the souls that conclude things before God after seeing this trauma and they conclude? That's one question.
She's asking what happens to persons who conclude after seeing such horrible situations that there's no God. Hopefully, they'll meet up with someone like you, and you can explain that, yes, what you saw was horrible, but you can't solve those situations on the material platform. It'll either be this catastrophe or that catastrophe. How to get to the root of all those situations, how to live your life so that in spite of such external catastrophes, your life is still successful and you can help others to be successful.
If I may, one additional question.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of youngsters who, current generation, instead of loving in this wonderful form of Krishna and Radha, they tend to go into Buddhism. What would you give them?
She's asking that, according to her observation, a lot of young persons, rather than be attracted to the beautiful form of Krishna, are tending, as she sees it, toward Buddhism. Yes, that's your question? Factually speaking, there are so many varieties of Buddhism. The term is becoming as vague as the term Hinduism. What would you say Hinduism means? I'll tell you what the term Hinduism means. It means everything that goes on the Indian subcontinent except what happens in Pakistan. That's Hinduism. It's such a vague term, you know. It includes persons who worship Shiva, Vishnu, Nehru, this one, snakes, a village tree. It means so many things. So similarly, there's the new expression called buffet Buddhism. You go to the buffet of Buddhism and you pick what you want, and then you say, I'm a Buddhist. So it's very hard to get a consensus of what actually the term is applying to now. Bhakti offers the solution for the whole problem of desire. You can't kill desire. As Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, Nahi kaschit chanamapi jatu tishtya karmakrit. No one can stop acting even for a moment. You can't stop acting because you can't stop desiring. So how to have the perfection of desire? That is the goal of Bhagavad Gita. But if you are incapable of going to the ultimate conclusion, it does help if you actually just, for a few moments, stop being so destructive. Let's say this child again, serving a good purpose today, is naughty and smearing ketchup all over the walls of the house, and if the mother says, sit in a corner for 5 minutes, of course, that's not progressive parenting, is it, these days? But if the mother says, sit in the corner, how long can the child do that? Not even for 5 minutes. But still, it's some respite. It's some peace. So Buddha taught like that. He's telling people, just chill out. Just meditate on your incoming, outgoing breath. Just stop desiring. It serves a temporary purpose, but it's not the ultimate solution. The ultimate solution is you have to deal with the fire of desire. It's not going away. You may suppress it for a while, but it'll roar back again. Nevertheless, think about the term buffet Buddhism. You can make out of Buddhism whatever you like. You reject anything that's metaphysical, like reincarnation. You take a little bit of this from the buffet, a little bit of that from the buffet. And of course, you can do the same with Hinduism. We'll have to coin it. Oh, Prabhupada already coined the term. Hodgepodge Hinduism. And then there's cafeteria Catholicism. Fortunately, we have Bhagavad Gita as it is. And by following Krishna's instructions, you can solve all these paradoxes, all these mysteries. All right. Thank you. Hare Krishna.